Hola y bienvenidos a Cultura. Hello and welcome to Cultura. I'm Carla Benavides. Since Michelle Lujan Grisham's administration took over in January, there's a lot of new faces and ideas here in Santa Fe. In 2003, the Indian Affairs Department was specifically created to strengthen the relationship between the tribal communities, the state, and federal governments. We sat down with Cabinet Secretary Lynn Trujillo in discussing the many challenges her department is currently facing. Bienvenida, Secretaria Trujillo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Muchas gracias.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your appointment from Gobernadora Michelle Lujan. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a unanimous decision at Senate. Is that correct?
It was a really beautiful day. I had a wonderful hearing at the Senate Rules Committee, supported by my family and many tribal leaders who traveled throughout the state to come and support me, and a unanimous vote on the Senate floor where my family joined me, and it was really beautiful.
Can you list out several things that will change with the new administration?
I think we've already seen change with this administration. One, we have a governor who is committed to restoring the respect between the state of New Mexico, her office, and the 23 sovereign nations, tribes, and pueblos here in New Mexico. In my role as Cabinet Secretary, I feel very supported by our governor in carrying out the work that we have ahead of us. And we have a lot of work ahead of us. Not for just this year, but the next 4 years, maybe even 8 years ahead. So there's part of the change that I've seen already is the tribal leaders that have been reaching out to the department, the communication that's coming out of this department, how we're available and interfacing with our tribal communities. The other thing is a lot of my, cabinet secretaries that I serve with, the change in that and how their willingness to work with our tribal governments and reach out. I get questions from some of the cabinet secretaries about issues or how we can work together, and that type of spirit of collaboration I think is refreshing. We really have an opportunity to reboot and move forward here, and as I said, we have a lot of work to do. Part of my goal, one of the first things that I wanted to do when I got here was restore that respect and the government-to-government relationship between this department and our 23 nations, tribes, and pueblos. That's very important to me. The other thing was to stabilize the department and to rebuild. So we're in a process of rebuilding so that we can carry on the work that the priorities that Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has laid out and will lay out, the priorities of our tribal leaders, some of which we'll learn through the summit. And so they probably will ask us to be taking on some issues. That is our role. We have that role to help assist with shaping policy here in this department. And then some of our own ideas that we might have moving forward. And then also some of the work that the legislature has handed us. So we're going to be doing a strategic plan. I'm working very hard with the Deputy Secretary to get our department fully staffed. We're working towards bringing a couple of people on. And once we do that, we'll sit down and do a strategic plan so that we can chart out our work. What's really important to me and is critical is the follow-up, not only how we're going to do things, what we're going to do, but really the results at the end of the day.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a member of Sandia Pueblo. I am also part Taos and Acoma Pueblos. I still live at Sandia. Grew up there. Most of my family lives on the reservation. and went to school. I was very fortunate to go to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire for my undergrad, where I studied fine arts and religion, and then decided to go on to law school, and actually got my law degree from UNM. And I really enjoyed that experience, and was able to go and work in Washington, D.C. for a large firm representing tribal interests on a national level, and then come back home and work for my tribe as their general counsel.
And I was just about to ask you
Yeah.
about general counsel. What did that entail?
Well, I've been fortunate. Actually, I was general counsel for this department during the Richardson administration, and then left the department to be general counsel for my tribe. And that job is very interesting. I was able to work on a variety of issues, anything from gaming, spanning to environment, water issues, taxation, which I really enjoy, uh, housing. It's just as in-house general counsel, I was able to practice in a wide variety of areas, which actually has provided me with a good basis for this job that I'm in right now.
I want to ask you about your previous job at the USDA. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure. I was with USDA Rural Development for a little over 2 years, going on 3 years. I came on during the Obama administration, and I was a national Native American coordinator. So I was a Washington, D.C. employee, but I was fortunate to work out of the state office in Albuquerque. I really enjoyed that job because I got to work with tribal nations across the United States, as well as with all the rural development offices across the nation. So really served as a liaison for our agency to talk with tribes about the programs that USDA had available to them, try to work with them about how to access these programs. And then I also was able to work with staff to help them better understand tribes. Some of our staff didn't have experience with working with tribes or even tribal governments, so I was able to provide training and act as a conduit. And I really enjoyed that work.
I want to jump in and ask you about tribal liaisons. What is their role, and what is the criteria to become a tribal liaison?
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, last week was the first time that I was able to meet with many of the liaisons in the other state departments. As you know, I served as a liaison when I worked with USDA Rural Development, and I saw my role in that position as a facilitator, as an educator, to be a conduit between the department that I was working for and the tribes that I was serving. I think the same thing of the liaisons here that are placed in various departments throughout the state.
Where are a few departments that liaisons exist, but maybe people don't know about?
So we have a number of really great liaisons in the administration. One person that I have gotten the opportunity to meet with one-on-one is Department of Health, and her name is Aiko Allen. She's been very, very committed and involved in working with the Indian Affairs Department, but also really committed to serving tribal communities in her capacity with the department. And I know that she goes out and she does outreach, so she typically talks about the different services that Department of Health can provide to tribal communities. There's also a really great liaison in the Office of the State Engineer. So water issues are of major concern to the tribes here in New Mexico, and that liaison, I know, has a critical role in interfacing with the tribes. There are many departments that have liaisons, and I know that there's some vacancies in some of those departments, but those cabinet secretaries have reached out to me and ask me for assistance, either by asking me if we have a position description or if I know of anybody. So there's really a commitment by this administration, by the cabinet secretaries, to fill those vacancies because they realize about how critical a tribal liaison is in tribal communities and acting as that conduit between the communities and the department and vice versa, right? Those liaisons actually are out in the field, are out in the communities, and can bring information back to that cabinet secretary.
Can you give us a little bit of an insider on what projects your department is working on?
From the legislature, we've received some priorities to work on. So right now, after the session, we're sorting through, the deputy and I are sorting through charting the path of what our work is going to look like. And a couple of those are working on the Energy Transition Act. The department is named in that law. A fund is going to be coming to the Indian Affairs Department. And a large part of that work is going to be outreach to the Native communities in that affected area, mostly the Navajo chapter houses. So we're going to be working to hear from the tribal communities about their needs in relation to the San Juan generating plant shutting down. So that's going to be a big part of our work. Another really big part of our work is going to be focusing on the missing, murdered Indigenous women. Because of House Bill 278 that the governor signed into law, the Indian Affairs Department is going to be convening a task force. So we're tasked with that. I will be serving as chair.
And the task force, what does that include?
So the Indian Affairs Department is a part of that, as well as the Department of Public Safety, the secretary or a designee. And the task force includes members that are appointed by the governor, representing the Pueblos, Jicarilla, Apache Nation, Mescalero, the Navajo Nation. There are also representatives from nonprofit organizations that serve women, either provide legal services, and then also a representative from a nonprofit that provides counseling services.
Can you tell us a little bit about the epidemic?
We are beginning now to do outreach because it's really critical and important that we are inclusive and we invite people to the table. There's been a lot of really great work already happening around this issue. And so my hope is, as a department and as cabinet secretary, to convene all these organizations and people to really look at this issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. I've been doing a lot of research and reading on it, and I was shocked to learn of the statistics that are out there. The fact that New Mexico is leading the nation, and that Albuquerque is second in terms of city for missing and murdered Indigenous women. That was shocking to me, those type of statistics. But even in light of those statistics, one of the main issues that I've learned about is the lack of data. So while there might be statistics, we still don't really have a really clear, full picture of the epidemic. It's a crisis. I know that there are people who have been working on it for many, many, many years, advocates that are tireless who are doing that work. But now, through the efforts of our state legislature, through the efforts of Congresswoman Deb Haaland and others, they really are shining a light on this epidemic. And my hope is that through the work that we're going to do through the Indian Affairs Department, that we continue to give voice to these women.
Your department is kind of like a liaison between the 23 tribes and the federal government. Can you tell us a little bit about some barriers that you have faced so far?
I don't want this to be lost, but we're really a conduit. A conduit between our tribes and our state government, the governor, the other departments, and with any issue, I think impacting tribes, there isn't just one party involved. A lot of times there are multiple parties, and there are multiple jurisdictions that a tribe will deal with, that we deal with in our job, in our work. Also, I'll give you an example. For example, the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue. That is a complex issue that spans all types of jurisdictions, which can be a challenge in terms of bringing all the different parties together. So with respect to that issue, you have tribes and their law enforcement. You have the federal government that could also be involved, Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office. You also have state jurisdiction if something happens in relation to an area off reservation. You also have the local municipalities or counties that could be involved. So can be pretty complex. It can be a challenge. But I also think that it could be an opportunity for us to collectively work on some of these issues.
And I did want to jump into capital outlay. Can you explain the process of those funds coming into the IAD?
Just to give you an idea, the department is projected to receive over $75 million in capital outlay from this legislative session because of the leadership of the governor and the support of the New Mexico legislature. Right now, there's about 147 projects that the Indian Affairs Department would administer. And this is the largest amount of capital outlay money that has come to the department, even going back 10 years.
To your knowledge, do all 23 tribes apply for this capital outlay funding?
From what I saw during this legislative session, yes, they do. Tribes, we met with a number of tribal leaders and their lobbyists when they were up here meeting with not only the governor, but their state legislators to secure critical funding for capital outlay project dollars to meet needs in their tribal communities. I believe that probably every sovereign nation in New Mexico will receive a capital outlay dollars out of this legislative session. And just to give you an idea, not only does the Indian Affairs Department receive capital outlay, but there are other departments across the cabinet that receive dollars that fund critical infrastructure projects in tribal communities. So aging and long-term services, a lot of times they receive funding for senior centers in tribal communities. DOT, they receive funding for road projects that are going through tribal areas. Interstate Stream Commission, I know there was money for the Amit settlement. But we tend to receive a bulk of the capital outlay requests that come out of the legislature.
And what is the process for a tribe to request that funding for capital outlay?
The Department of Finance Administration works with tribes to fill out their ICIP, in which they can put in their priority projects for the following legislative year. And then, of course, tribes have the ability to lobby and to work with their respective representatives to secure that money for their projects. So I think there's different avenues in which tribes can try to acquire capital outlay money for their projects. This year, I will point out, this year is a little bit different, and this is something new for us. So typically, capital outlay dollars are funded through severance bond monies. This year, the projects are general fund monies, which means that the awardees don't have to wait for the bonds to be sold, which happens 2 times a year. Because they're general fund dollars, that means that they're available beginning the fiscal year, which is July 1st. So we have a lot of preparation to do so that we can ensure that tribes and tribal communities have access to those dollars and can get working on their projects.
In learning what tribes need, do you plan to take the time to visit every pueblo, nation, tribe in order to find those needs?
Most definitely. I've been really fortunate enough to have been in many, if not all, of the tribal communities and a lot of Navajo Nation chapter houses, because part of my background actually was being a community organizer on several campaigns. So we're able to get out into tribal communities. Because of that type of organizing, I really believe in getting out in the community. It's the way to stay connected, to see what's going on in communities, to hear not only from tribal leaders, but community members about the issues that they're facing. And that's who we serve. That's who we serve in my role and as this department. So yes, to your question, it is very important to me. I have invitations. I welcome invitations. I welcome our Indian people here in New Mexico to come visit us here in the office. It's their office. I tell tribal leaders that all the time. I love when they come by, not only to meet with me, but to meet with the really great staff that are here. We're really small, but we work for them. And so I'm really excited. I'm actually really excited that the legislative session is at an end, because that means I can spend my time going out to communities and visiting with them and hearing from them, like you said, about what their issues are.
And you attended 2 tribal leader summits this year, is that correct?
So I probably will attend many more summits this year as cabinet secretary. I was able to attend the tribal summit that the Coalition to End Domestic Violence Against Native Women had recently at Santa Ana. We will also, as the department, will host our own summit. There is a state tribal summit that we're in the early stages of planning. So if you don't know, under the State Tribal Collaboration Act, that act actually mandates that there be at least one annual summit. That summit provides the governor of New Mexico to meet with the 23 sovereign nations in New Mexico to address issues of mutual concern. This year is the 10th annual summit, and we have worked with the governor's office to secure the date of May 16th on her calendar. She has committed a full day to meet with tribal leaders. I think that commitment shows her respect for our tribal governments in terms of making herself available to dialogue with them about some of the issues that are impacting their tribal communities, but also to hear from the governor. So the deputy secretary and I have been reaching out to tribal leadership to ask them what their expectations are for the summit. What do they envision? What would they like to get out of it? And we've heard a lot of really great feedback, but one of the things that we keep on hearing is that they want to hear from the governor as well, kind of what her priorities are and how she will work with them, as well as her administration, the cabinet secretaries, to address their issues.
Well, Secretary Trujillo, we definitely appreciate your time here. We just wish you and your team, your department, the best of luck.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity. And I want to say to our Native people here in New Mexico and the 23 sovereigns here that that's what this department is here for. That's what I am here for. We're of service. Please come see us. We're available. I'm available all the time, and I want to make sure that we do the best that we can by them.
We want to especially thank you, our audience, for watching today's program of Cultura. I'm Carla Benavides, aquí celebrando la vida con cultura. Hasta la próxima vez.